Fights to the death are all very well, but the stakes of a fight,
not bad at all,
don't always have to be quite so fatal. Today's topic is the gold standard of scenes which can be summed up: we're fighting, but secretly I fancy the pants off you. Alejandro and Elena in The Mask of Zorro. I do love a flirty fight scene. Well, mostly. You get your romantic leads, you get them sparring or competing or just really, really mad, and off you go. You can add levity, playfulness, character development, if you do it right. My name is Jill Bearup and I enjoy pretending to hit people for fun and fiction, and I make videos about movie fights. If that sounds like your thing, subscribe. If you're not into that, well, maybe I can persuade you in the next 10 minutes. The first thing you need to do is make sure your characters have a reason to fight. To be fair, the setup for a fight that's mostly about flirting is a little bit easier because it's inherently a little bit ridiculous, but you have to have something. So, Zorro has just stolen a map from Elena's adopted father on behalf of her biological father, and then there was a huge multi-person fight scene which generally caused chaos, and now he needs to escape. Elena doesn't know what he's stolen, but she confronts him with a sword in order to get it back. She needs to win this fight to get the map back. He needs to win this fight so that he and De La Vega can carry on with their plans to save California. Plausible enough? Great, because it's mostly just an excuse to get these two characters into close and sweaty contact. Swords notwithstanding. Close and sweaty contact again, I should say, because they have met before, both with Alejandro as Zorro and as the delightfully jerkish but secretly sweet Don Alejandro. This particular setup means that both of them are actively trying to win, as opposed to something like the fight between Lizzie and Darcy in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which we'll get to in a later video, where Lizzie is trying to hurt Darcy because he hurt her sister's feelings, and her feelings, but Darcy is, physically speaking, mostly just trying to defend himself. There's more going on than that, but you'll just have to watch the video. But since both of these two are actually really trying to win, and we can see that Alejandro is taller, stronger, probably faster, and has been training with De La Vega, we need this line by Elena,
I have had the proper instructions since I was 4.
to let us know she's going to be able to handle it just fine. Because in this situation, it needs to be a close fight. It needs to be a contest between equals. He's got the physical advantage, but she's had a decade or two more to work on the swordplay. And weapons are excellent equalizers if you know how to use them. This whole fight is the swashbuckling tone of this film to a T. He could attempt to escape without fighting, but should he? Seems more likely that he can beat Elena, or at least achieve a win condition that means he gets to leave without attracting attention. And this is fun, so he's just gonna do that. There's a danger that she might beat him to the point that he has to give the map back, but that's clearly not a danger that he takes very seriously. As for Elena, she's taking the opportunity to do something her father would approve of, the retrieval of his property, in a way that he most definitely would not approve of, his daughter randomly dueling masked men. And it's perfect, because what we've already seen of her points to Elena as headstrong and adventurous and a risk taker.
Well, I tried to behave properly the way my father would like me to.
Yes, we know, honey, but really, you're quite the adrenaline junkie. And she correctly assesses that asking nicely for the stolen item will probably not result in its return, no matter how charming she is, or how much of her underwear she flashes. And so she brings a sharp, pointy object with her.
Good morning, senor.
And her sultriest expression, obviously. That little appraising look is just perfect tonally. You can't take a fight like this too seriously. You need a sprinkle of levity from at least one of the parties, and preferably both, because otherwise, it's a flirty fight. You don't want it to be dour and boring, do you? This fight is not like the other fights in the film. Even the ones which are inherently very swashbuckly and have a lot of humour in them don't have the same feel as this. They're inherently more about danger and adventure. This is the dance again. Only this time he's not doing it to distract her father. And there's no one around to watch. And so, command.
Give it back.
Refusal.
no.
And then he laughs, so escalation. The first escalation. It's not that every fight choreographed by Bob Anderson begins with testing the skill and determination of your opponent. It's just that all of my favourite fights choreographed by Bob Anderson begin with testing the skill and determination of your opponent. Now a weapon is involved, we're introducing some actual risk, and with that risk comes physiological arousal. Heart racing, palms sweaty, heavy breathing, that kind of thing. You don't see much of that yet, but you will. Are those feelings present because you're in danger? Because it's hot in here? Or is that just your opponent? Physiological arousal is one of the things we'll be talking about when we talk about Bulletproof Monk. Yes, really, it's going to be a time. Because the general lack of physiological arousal in that fight is one of the things that makes it so boring and jarring. There are several escalations in the fight, but this is the first and the most overtly threatening. And it immediately ups the stakes because, you know, sharp, pointy object. near your face. And note that he doesn't have a sword right now. She could just stab him, but this is not that kind of fight. And these are not those kind of characters. And she knows it, which is why she looks so pleased with herself. And he knows it, but he tests her intent and her skill by quite casually knocking the blade away, but nope. She's quite serious. But not serious enough that he can't probably seduce and or sword fight her into changing her mind. And he knows it, hence this intimately toned sword blade touchy-feely thing and her little smile and the flick away, followed by, of course,
I don't have the time to give you the proper instruction.
And indeed.
I have had the proper instructions since I was 4.
Which, as I said, establishes our level playing field. Honor satisfied by both parties, he draws his sword, and look how she smiles about that, and off we go. The arc of the fight runs thusly. Zorro attacks initially and Elena parries everything until this disengage. And you can see the anger under there because he stole something and she's going to get it back, but yeah, that's not the main thing that's going on really, is it? He nods, acknowledging her skill. They circle. He smiles. She takes her stance again, at which point he immediately attacks. A bit like a master waiting for his student to be in the best position possible to give her the best chance of winning, which is either very noble or a little bit patronizing, a little bit provocative, a little bit talking down to you but with a sword. She certainly seems to think so because now she goes on the attack and she looks positively joyous about it. He's backing up and looking uncomfortable and the first point, so to speak, goes to Elena, who rips his shirt. Escalation the second, but a decidedly different tone than the first one, right? Still decidedly martial but also really quite suggestive. Note how the sword is generally at his throat or his mouth. Yeah. They then mutually break apart to disrobe some more because, gosh, yes, you are quite skilled and I'm getting a bit warm and might need my full range of motion after all. But even though they're literally taking clothes off, this part is more for humor than sex appeal, though there is some of both. Incidentally, that expression on his face is just perfect. Tone again. It's basically play fighting, but with live blades. You lunatics. Hey, does anyone else remember the Wilkinson sword advert that was heavily inspired by this? Elena at this point is flushed with success and immediately goes on the offensive as soon as Zorro has his blade back, which, again, noble. And of course a sly little echo of him doing exactly the same thing to her. In a choreographed fight, you really do want to wait until your partner is actually ready before attacking them, but it's nice that they can work that into the choreography as a character moment. And then we play with tone some more with some unnecessarily fancy-dancy spinning, with Elena still mainly being the one on the offensive, because as I said before, this is the continuation of the Paso Doble? Is that a Paso Doble? I don't actually know. Well, whatever it is. The continuation of the dance by more violent means. And without the necessity of hurting her feelings directly afterwards. Anyway, it's his turn to randomly slice some clothing.
Not bad.
Another escalation, as it were. And then...
Not bad at all.
Note in this case that he just moves right in. This isn't an attack, parry, riposte kind of thing. He just gets her blade out of the way and then bulls his way right into her personal space. That makes her a little bit angry though. Mostly because it's scoring a point, in the same way that her slicing his shirt was her scoring a point. She didn't really seem to mind him slicing her skirt though. Incidentally, making her angry is actually very clever from a tactical standpoint. Someone who is precise enough to slice your shirt open is clearly a formidable opponent, and so maybe making them angry so that they forget form and sense is a good idea. And it makes sense for him to take advantage of her impulsiveness and make her cross and sloppy. Remember, it's a game and they're both trying to win. And while mutual winning is possible, no jokes please, the idea is that the other person has to acknowledge that you're winning. And so she attacks again, but he parries easily and then slices off her shoulder strap. And then shrugs, the cocky little twerp, baiting her to get in closer. At which point she loses her temper completely and tries a big old stab, which he quite easily avoids, traps her sword, and kisses her again. After which point he disengages, laughing, and then engages her in a sword fight again. Really, there is no clearer indication that he's not actually trying to hurt her, like, at all, than this. That ridiculously telegraphed lunge should have been the end of the fight. If he'd wanted to, he could have ended it right there, but no. And then we mirror that with this exchange where she gets her temper under control and manages to disarm him. Note how heavily they're both breathing right now, by the way.
Señorita.
I love this tiny piece of choreography. Note how she moves backwards into a more threatening posture. The pose and the facial expression say, I will kill you, but the moving backwards into it say, but I'd rather not because you're pretty hot. And isn't it nice when people are quick on the uptake, because clearly he realizes this too, smiles, beats the sword away, and backflips his way to freedom, or at least to a pile of hay, or possibly straw. Cute. and suggestive, and a minor change of environment. And also an opportunity to A, make Elena's life more difficult, as she's got to wade through this stuff, and B, bring in a more amusing defensive weapon in the form of a horse collar. And then the reverse disarm, and he is back in control. She, quite sensibly, goes for his sword as soon as he disarms her, but not quite fast enough. Remember, it's about the other person knowing that you've won, hence the logical extension of all of this bodice ripping. He just looks so ridiculously pleased with himself. What would her dad think? Okay, fine.
Do you surrender?
Never. But I may scream.
Largely, chemistry is something that you can't teach, it's just something that you know when you see. But 2 quick notes for it at this point. Note how neither of them are moving back. Both of them stay absolutely rooted to the spot. If anything, they move towards each other. I mean, part of that is because actors need to hit marks in order to be in focus and stuff, but still. Also, watch how his eyes are either on her eyes or her mouth, and they keep skipping from one to the other.
Sometimes I have that effect.
And more snogging, which is the actual win condition, so to speak. Oh, look at that little cheek stroke. That's adorably romantic. The important thing is not the disarm itself, but the incapacitation via clothes ripping, and the distraction via kissing so that he can escape. With style, obviously. Because you know at this point that both of them have kind of forgotten about the whole map thing. And to round off the playful tone nicely, sorry, you only get 1 kiss because I gotta go do important adventuring stuff. And you don't get to keep the hat either. Resolution. Zorro gets to keep the map, Elena needs new underwear, and they both got a toe-curling snog out of the deal.
He was very vigorous, father.
This fight is beautiful. In a serious movie, it would make no sense, but this is a comic, swashbuckling adventure, and sometimes that means showing off and unnecessary dance spinning and flirting with beautiful ladies who are unexpectedly amazing fencers.